Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Okay, so we're back with Bill Stierle and another great episode planned for you today on this journey. And I'm really enjoying it so far, Bill.
Yeah, likewise.
And today we're going to talk about truth and black and white thinking. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory on its face. I mean, or at least easy to understand in, for the common thinking of what black and white thinking is. But I'm wondering what black and white thinking really means that we're not seeing.
Well, I'm really glad that you're asking that question, because the way I like to really talk about truth versus black and white thinking, and black and white thinking is a little bit, unless I see it personally, it's not true. So, and we might have talked about this a little bit, right? Hands over the face, right?
Well, I'm thinking of my toddler when they were toddlers. They're not toddlers anymore, but when I had toddlers, when they would put their hands over their eyes, they'd think you couldn't see them. Now, I know that's not the same thing you're talking about, but I think there is some parallel there.
There is a parallel there, as well as the challenge of when a kid puts his hands over his eyes, it's the I don't see it. Connection can be restored. Even though you're not there, you're there. And that's a big part of the importance. And I swear this is like the best thing ever. It's the importance of the peekaboo game in child development.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. It's a child development. Belonging, consistency, and stability will be there. If I don't see this person, it doesn't mean that they're not there or watching. It doesn't mean that they're not there.
Wow.
And it's really important that it's somewhere between, this is true, somewhere between 8 to 13 inches from the kid's face. It's got to be this way.
Wow.
Peekaboo. And that creates the truth. And then truth becomes stable, because what I'm seeing is connection is stable. This person is there connecting. I'm a part of the tribe. They're a part of my tribe. And there is a truth to it. Now, when it gets a little wiggly is when we start growing up, there's the nuances is that the person is away, but they might be away forever because they had passed, or because they're no longer in my life, or because of the fallout that took place. They might be gone. And then the idea is I got to choose to mourn the loss of the connection and then feel sad about it. And that's exactly the right feeling to have. And what happens with truth and black and white thinking is, unless a person sees it for themselves, they get to claim that it's not true.
Oh, I can think of lots of examples of this in our current culture. I mean, I would think the whole climate change debate is one of those, right? Well, it's having this polar vortex. It's the coldest it's ever been in my lifetime here in the middle of America. Therefore, whole global warming thing must not be true, because I certainly haven't seen any evidence to suggest that temperatures are really rising.
Right. I have this evidence of this cold day. As the senator is holding a snowball, at Senate floor, I have this evidence that it's cold outside, and the snow is telling me that this planet isn't warming because I'm having this cold thing in my hand. And that is an example of black and white thinking. It's this way because I am proving this to be true. It's this way.
Wow.
Now, the problem is truth doesn't work like that. The way truth works, and we might have used this metaphor in the past, is more like an apple pie at Thanksgiving. There is a fly that lands on the pie. You see it, I don't. If I look and the fly's not on it, my truth is the fly was never on it. And I'll be with joy eating the pie that the fly had jumped on several different parts of the pie. But your truth is, holy crap, there's no way I'm getting near that pie, because your truth is, I've seen this thing.
It's contaminated.
It's contaminated. So if we look at the experience of the complexity of global warming, is I am going to talk about all the flies on the pie, which people don't want to do, because then they have to do a behavior change. Stop putting flies on the pie.
Okay.
But I like putting flies on the pie. I like using my car. I don't want to give up whatever that's going to make. And by the way, the give up is not really a give up. There's like no give up. It is, you still get the thing that you'd like, but it's got to come in a different format. You still got to get the car and the transportation you'd like. It just comes through electricity and wind instead of it comes through other sources. It just doesn't come through oil.
Sure.
So it's still, you're still getting the thing you'd like. It's not the way you would like it, but you're still getting the thing you would like. Okay, so the truth is that I am able to, with my adult mind, with a general sense of research or understanding, or taking a certain level of advice from experts, this is the data that I have, and this is the data they have. This is problematic, or this is not problematic.
Wow, Bill, that's great. You know what? I have a little example maybe to add to this that just happened yesterday with me. So I'm on Facebook, and one of my friends, probably a friend of yours too on Facebook, posted a article written by some Belgian magazine about diesel fuel cars versus electric fuel cars. And they were referencing a German study that claimed that electric cars are no better than a diesel fuel powered car in terms of the amount of CO2 it would emit into the atmosphere over its lifetime. And they cited some evidence, one of which is notable, was the fact that in Germany, the majority of their electricity is generated from burning coal. And then, to me, reading this article, what was glaringly obvious is that they ignored all of the CO2 generated in the manufacturing and distribution process of producing diesel fuel. Now, they were very happy to cite the coal CO2 emissions for producing the electricity that would fuel the electric car. So again, this was, I think, one way of trying to make a black and white argument about, hey, electric car, not really the green choice that people think it is. But they were, to me, the word that came into my head and that I commented was, it seems like fuzzy math to me. If we're going to make this comparison, you got to look at the entire cradle to grave cycle of both vehicles, manufacturing them, fueling them, etc. And then you could compare the two. So is black and white thinking a convenient way for people to ignore truth, or is it making their own truth that they can live with?
They're validating a partial truth that's in alignment with their belief structure. Wow. See how as soon as that hits, they're validating a partial truth that's in alignment with their, wait a minute, I even couldn't improve it, their belief structure or advocacy. I am advocating for.
And I think in a more, I guess, common language narrative we hear a lot about these days. Actually, I didn't mean to use that word in that setup, but they're really supporting the narrative they want to.
Right. Well, that's an advocacy.
Advocacy, right.
I'm advocating. I'm supporting the narrative. I'm going to create the narrative. So yes, there is flies on the pie in the political system. Yes, there are problems inside the Obamacare. There is, or the Affordable Health Care Act. There is a problem with, global warming. There are problems with these things, but when we get advocacy truth and partial truth being advocated for just to validate somebody's identity, we're in big trouble, because this is the identity that I am advocating for.
Well, and isn't this, and I know we touched on this in a past episode, isn't this really what capitalism and marketing does? And maybe not always, not that there are not products that are perfectly in integrity that are being marketed, right? But don't you think the majority of marketing is supporting a narrative you want to get people to believe, oh, I should buy that product?
Yeah, you're not going to tell what it doesn't do or what its limitations are. Hey, listen, and this is one of the reasons why drug companies are required to put down the side effects. They're required to do that. And whereas in other countries, they won't even let them do it. They don't let them advertise.
The government does not let them?
No, you cannot advertise drugs on the internet.
You can't advertise them. I thought that you were saying you can't give the interactions or disclaimers. You could only.
No, you can market to doctors. You can market, and they can market to doctors, and then they have to go through the gatekeeper that knows if they're going to recommend this to the other person or not, and go like, there's no way I'm recommending this to this person. They're going to go down in a second. Meanwhile, happily, if the customer comes in, doctor, can I try this? I saw this ad. Oh yes, I saw that ad too. And all of a sudden it's like, don't drive heavy machinery when you're doing this, and it causes sleepwalking. And you may get drowsy and find yourself on a tractor somewhere. Notice I just did a counter marketing spin,
Sure.
in a humorous way towards something that I could poke a stick at. And you can poke a stick at anything. The main thing is, can we as human beings, can we come back to an honest discussion of truth, which is called the truth. You got to put the two words together. And here's a truth, which is a partial truth. And then you put a second truth next to that. And that's called the truth. Because here's the truth here. And the truth is, yes, you are holding a ball of snow, or a snowball in your hand. That's true. I see you. And you know what? That snowball is cold. But the truth is, you see what I mean?
Oh, I'm waiting. Yeah.
The truth is that this is called, the difference between weather and climate. Weather is you're holding the snowball. Climate is not that.
Yeah, it's the big picture.
It's the measurement over time.
And across the whole globe.
And across the globe. That's what you're sitting with. That is what that's looking for. It's such a different way to think about it, because the truth is going to be more comprehensive and more fuller. To put those two words together is real word. It provides a broader perspective, and it expands our perception of what the truth is, because otherwise then you'll have a group of people, they might be advocating for that the world is flat. Can you imagine that people could advocate for that? The person says, I haven't been to space, so I only see the world as flat, and this is the way it really looks, and I only know that to be true. And there's this whole other group of people that believe the same way I do. And that's called a tribe, or an advocacy for that belief. And doesn't mean that those other people are going to, because they agree with you, that makes your truth more true. It just means that you're not looking at the flies on the pie.
And so isn't it, broadening your perspective, taking in more information? It's very interesting. There was another example that my wife and business partner Tracy
Yep.
shared with me recently, and I'm going to keep this kind of general because I don't remember the specific names. I didn't intend to bring it up today here, but
Sure.
it was about how it's, I believe, the son of who's the major white supremacist who's always in the news, has been forever.
Duke.
David Duke, right. He was also one of the characters in that Black Klansman movie that has been popular this year. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
David Duke, his son, who was raised with the narrow perspective of white supremacy, ends up going to college and then learning just through experience that so many, and I'm not going to be so general to say everything he was brought up to believe, but so much of what he was brought up to believe, he found through experience was not true. And so he ends up broadening his perspective, and his narrow truth at that time, growing up as a child in his family and community, completely changed, and he became much more open-minded. And I don't know enough to really vouch for whether he's what a lot of people would consider a good person or not, but I was pleased to hear that even someone brought up in such a narrow belief structure can change their belief. And then I would think what we're seeing here today is see a different truth.
Yeah, that's really a big part of this, because the strong messaging can reinforce the limited or the partial truth that we're talking about. The strong messaging, this is not this is not this big of a deal. It's not a big deal. It happens in business all the time. People in capitalism and competitive thing, it's about winning the game. It's not about being collaborative and all this. It's like, no, it's a competitive system. Yeah, it's a competitive system that has a series of lines on it that you don't cross this line, because then it becomes either unethical, that's the first line, and then criminal if you cross that line. So there's lines that have been crossed that are called ethical lines, and there's lines that are crossed called criminal lines. Well, guess what happens if somebody decides, well, we're not going to say that this thing that was done, that's no big deal, that happens all the time. In other words, get rid of the ethical line, and then, oh, by the way, the criminal line, yeah, that's not such a big deal anyways, because it's whether you're caught or not, whether or not you have enough money or not, it's whether or not you've been messaged enough, whether or not you're rich enough. See, I get to wipe away that line too. And that's the current struggle, is the strong messaging, the black and white messaging that's coming up, is it's not a big deal. And meanwhile, wait a minute, it really sort of is a big deal. And are we going to get in that game of who's competing for eyeballs? And we get to have other countries get their viewpoints, and who they get to weigh in and tip the scale on our elections? That's where we're going? Good. Well, bring in marketing. Okay, I'll hire a marketing firm from China then. And you see what, oh my gosh, and bring money from there, because I'm going to be a stronger advocate for China and loosen the rules over there. And I'm going to break down the rules that we have here to fit their rules over there. You see, it gets really difficult now.
It really does. And we're seeing this play out in our current, culture and politics right now. I don't know if you probably saw it, but I saw Rudy Giuliani interviewed just recently, and he tried to say that if no laws are broken, it's okay to receive help from Russia through your campaign, which from a legal perspective, he may be right. I mean, until there's a law passed, and unless you participate in working with them to steal the information from somewhere, which is, I guess, part of what came out right in the Mueller report recently.
Right.
As long as the campaign did not actually coordinate or participate in, gathering the information to begin with that foreign adversary, but just receiving the information is okay. That's what he tried to say. So maybe from a legal perspective today, he's right. But from a moral perspective or ethical perspective, he just, that line is gone. He would like us to believe and want us to normalize, I think, right?
Boy, and that's the thing that's getting unsettled, is that some people don't have it, that there's a moral line regarding all kinds of different things. Some people have an ethical line. And I'm glad you brought the word moral into this, because there's a moral spiritual line, then there's this ethical line, and then there's this legal line. Well, the United States provides a lot of flexibility on the first two before it rises to the place of being legal, because we're trying to, as a nation, trying to include a very tricky concept called freedom of speech.
It is tricky. You've got to live with that, don't you?
You got to live with it, but you and I cannot plan a bank robbery like we talked about last time and not being in the legal line and have evidence about that. We could talk about planning it as a joke.
Sure.
Initially as a talking point, and that's freedom of speech. We got to use that as a talking point, but there's it's the moral line of it, the ethical line of it is different than the legal line of it, so that's
a great point, Bill. And what I wonder sometimes is, it seems that the people that write laws, our legislators, they do their best to try to predict any potential condition that may arise and to establish what that legal line is. But they also do it within the context of what is morally and ethically acceptable at the time, in the context of history at the time in our culture and society. And it seems, we sometimes hear this term in the media, a new normal. And I think that those ethical and moral lines get pushed. And while some people think, oh my gosh, no one would ever elect someone who was caught on tape regarding women as horribly as Trump did in the Access Hollywood tape. And then once we do, we all realize, wow, the ethical and moral line has been pushed. And maybe that's not a great example because there's not necessarily a legal sort of,
nope,
a legal
great
line.
Example. Great example.
Okay.
Great example. And let me show you why. The taking a value or a need like fairness. And if I muddy the message of fairness and I confuse the truth about fairness, the new normal is fairness looks like, if I'm smart enough, I can steal from others just so I don't get caught. And if I'm on a person's team or identity and I am in a church or in a religious party or an upstanding contributor in a community that donates so much, so what that I got the money from selling drugs?
Okay.
Now, holy crap. So I just took the left turn. I crossed the moral line, I crossed the ethical line, and across the legal line. But on the surface, my identity looks like, look at this hospital I built. Look at this thing I did over here. Look at this, look at what I've contributed to society. This is actually playing out with one of the owners of the big drug company that has been charged.
Oh, in the opioid crisis,
the
right?
Opioid crisis. The truth is, they've donated hundreds of millions of dollars to various different museums. They are upstanding in society with their generosity, with wealth, to put their names on top of these different museums. Right. Meanwhile, it's been pushing drugs that are where on the legal line, but clearly not ethical and not moral in their strategy and their tactic, because it's been messaged that the guy said, make it the drug user's problem. It's their fault, not our substance. Let's blame and demonize them, label and diagnose them. We're linking back to our last podcast. Label, diagnose them as bad, black and white thinking. We're good because we donate all this money to society, and look how much better we get from the money that we've made. Yeah, it's killed a couple 100,000 people, but what's it worth to lose a couple 100,000? I don't know those people. So you could see that people push for forgiveness if the person is on our team. I'm going to give this unethical behavior, this immoral behavior, a pass because it's not on my team. It's on my team, and the other person's not on my team. So that's why you'll hear a supporter say, well, yeah, they said that, but he's just being a 15-year-old boy. They don't say 15-year-old boy. They just say, guys talk like this. This is the way men are.
Boys will be boys type of thing.
Boys will be boys. Yeah. And meanwhile, it's not an adult conversation, and you can't win it from the moral place or the ethical place or the legal place, because the team effect takes place. They call the term is cult of personality takes place. The new normal has changed to, well, if you spin it well enough and you have a good enough identity, this is going to.
Well, that's a very interesting, I don't know if I want maybe conclusion there, Bill. And you know what it's making me think? I mean, what we're seeing play out, and I'll try to make this quick, but stick with me here. I mean, we've seen for the last 2 years, Donald Trump harp every chance he get there was no collusion, no collusion, no collusion. Meanwhile, there's no law against collusion, but he created this belief that collusion was the problem, not Russian interference in the election or conspiracy or obstruction. He created like you were saying, tapping the elephant brain. He created this belief that collusion's the bad thing. There hasn't been any collusion. He probably knew he would never be charged with collusion because there is no law against collusion.
Right.
But he created this belief among so many Americans that, collusion was the issue. So now he actually can say after the Mueller report, see, there was no collusion. I was right. And wants to have everybody make this thing go away. Now, a lot of the country does want this thing to go away, but there seems to be something else starting to happen now that we've been, when we're recording this, it's, I guess a week after the Mueller report came out, and we're starting to see, as people dig into the details, they're finding all the moral and ethical things at minimum that are off the rails, it seems, with the current administration. And is that going to be enough to convince people that it's time to make a change in 2020, or, that they've been duped over the last 2 years? I mean, is that gonna be enough to change people's beliefs, or enough people's beliefs, or is it their truth that is gonna be changed? I mean, what do you see potentially happening here?
Well, what's potentially happening is really what's going to play out is the people that are in black and white thinking will not move off of the vote. Their vote is already cast for Trump
because he's their guy.
Because he's their. That's my identity, and I'm in this place. And it's not. There's a lot of folks that are in pain about what they've been taught and what they've been experienced, or the strong messaging that the other side is bad, that there's been a truth called a associative truth. Here's socialism, the bad part of communism, and here's Democrats, and they're together. The Democrats are the new socialist or the new communist.
That's
Whereas,
amazing. Okay.
Because I'm setting a belief that my elephant brain has been demonized to label and diagnose, and I'm going to set it next to this party versus setting it next to Russia.
Right.
I'm not going to set it over there because that system actually shifted to this, king with his 13 men, with his autocrats, right?
Right.
Their system has moved away from socialism too, which is everybody's trying to contribute for the greater good. Yeah, but they actually just are not doing that now. They're actually doing, here's a bunch of these powerful men that are really, really rich, and they're deciding on how much of the pie that each of them are taking, and what can Putin do to keep that system in place? And it's essentially what Americans fought for against England with the nobles and the king.
Right.
That's what we fought against for our freedom and independence. But right now, we're coming back and putting the truth is, well, that's a better system because it looks cleaner and it looks easier for people to believe I'm just going to abdicate power to these really rich, really smart people. But yes, they have wealth, but smart. All they're doing is figuring out how to collect and steal from everybody instead of a collaborative, cooperative society, which works way better. Now, to come back around to the word collusion and the reason why the word's working, this is when your jaw gets to drop a little bit.
Oh, I can't wait.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Here's the word. Here, I'll put my two hands up here. So I'm going to just pull the word apart and watch what happens. Collusion. Co-illusion. Co-illusion. It's two people agreeing on the same illusion. The people, that's why it's not a legal term, because if there's two people and if there's no collusion, then I'm having you there's no collusion, but there is an illusion that I would like you to focus on. The illusion is I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
I didn't do anything wrong. We're left with the illusion.
Wow.
That's what we're left with language wise, is the illusion is dangling and people don't know that the illusion is dangling. It's a little weird, but that's what happens is the illusion. And it's not to say that there's not illusion on both sides of the aisle. At the same time, I mean, there are there are choices and laws that were made from the Democratic side of the fence. It's like, really? That's like, I don't think that looks fair, and that doesn't look like it's going to help us at all. Yeah, it'll help this, thing, but that's actually just trying to bubble wrap somebody from getting hurt, and that one's not going to work either. It's overprotection, it's overkill, it's overregulation, but we need some of it, because if we swing it all the way to the other side, now all of a sudden it's black and white thinking is regulators are bad. Excuse me.
Right.
Regulators are safekeepers. They're police officers for a certain product or service. Let me see what I got this right. You're going to get rid of the police officer to protect food? Really? Really? Does that sound like a real good idea? To get rid of the police officer and say, this person that's making this gets to have it any way they want because no one is looking over their shoulder. Let's get rid of the regulators for the bank industry. Yeah, let's do that. That means that these folks are going to regulate themselves and not put their own interests ahead of the public. Gosh, I don't think I want to get rid of my police force called regulators. And so what happens, what's going to need to happen truth-wise, because the rebranding of regulators being bad has to get regulators, the word regulation or regulators has to get rebranded in a different way. Now, this is weird, but it's true, because if a brand gets polluted by a bad mistake, people don't buy it and don't use it anymore. They don't want it anymore, and they don't buy in. They'll throw, black and white thinking, they will throw the baby out with the bathwater. They'll go like, no, I'm not going to. I am so against, let's pick a really fire topic, abortion. I am so against abortion. I am going to get rid of the number one system that provides women's health care, Planned Parenthood.
Right. And it's like 2% of what they
2%
do,
of what
right?
they do.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? And the brand is polluted. I don't want voters to be registered. So I'm going to get rid of Acorn. I don't want minorities to be registered. So I'm going to pollute the company called Acorn. I'm going to demonize them because that's what I'm going to do. So you could see that in the purchasing of truth, it depends what message that people want to use language-wise, and where that messaging is going to take us to go back to a place. Well, it's okay if we pollute the planet more. What's the best? Asbestos is no problem. Lead's okay now. It's like, no, it really isn't. No, it really isn't. Coal is, oh yeah, we want to support coal. No, you don't. And it did take us somewhere, and coal and the coal industry and all those people that work and had work in that industry, what? They helped this nation and this world and human beings get to this next level. And now we have grown past, grown through, and now we're ready to move to a new system because there's more of us on the planet.
Right. And so, but now I'm wondering, Bill, I mean, okay, so black and white thinking, you may not be able to move people off of black and white thinking. You made that clear. Their mind's made up. It's their guy.
It might not.
Okay.
It might not be.
But then when you're faced with, as you were talking about, this branding one way or another to suit your purpose, your narrative. I mean, both sides do that. Can we agree? I mean, really, this is not they only do it, we don't. But it seems to me that that more politicians have been struggling to really in a defensive position to battle against the tapping of the elephant brain, no collusion, or whatever it is. So is there a way that the politicians that are on the defensive can use language and words better to not allow the other side to get away with what would we call it? Stealing the narrative and doing that branding, which is trying to manipulate who they're trying to sway. How would someone combat this?
Well, this is when it gets really interesting, because there is a way to do it. And, I could give you the answer to that question.
Okay? But you're not gonna.
But if I gave you the answer to the question, people will instantly, their brain will reject it right away.
Really?
Oh yeah, they do. And it has to do with the 7 different types of language that we speak from. And The reason why is because most politicians get stuck. The ones that get really stuck are trying to solve a problem and explain how it's going to work. That's where they get lost. So most of the Democratic field right now are doing that right now. They are identifying these various different problems, and then they're explaining and explaining and over explaining and explaining about why this problem, and they have the solution for this problem.
Yeah, I tuned out. I stopped listening already.
You see how that works?
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the problem. Trying that their tactics are not effective.
No. And then what winds up happening though is that leads to the third style of language, which has to do with, and we'll go into this a little bit more succinctly with the other 7 and stuff, is rewards, deals, and punishments. People really take bribes and push bribes in the marketing, branding, in the marketing narrative more. That they'll push a bribe in front of the person. They'll even call it an ethical bribe,
Sure.
instead of a gift. It's like, here is a gift. If it's a gift, it's authentic. You can use it free, and let's see what you can do with it. But when it's a deal, it starts to get a little yucky. And then even if the person takes the deal, they usually don't do a very good job on the thing they're working on. So for example, I had this discussion with my 7-year-old this morning, 12-year-old this morning. Tristan, you got to study for your history. And I know you want to play Fortnite because they have the Avengers version of Fortnite on, and it's a special edition this morning. I hear you want me to wake you up at 5:30. He goes, yes, I want to play the game first, and then I'm going to do the study guide. I go, Tristan, I can appreciate the plan that you're coming up with, but I want those 2 things separate. You got to focus on both of those 2 things separate, because if you do, if we make it a deal, your brain will sandbag the assignment and not study at all, and you'll just be trying to get the assignment done as quickly as possible so that you can play the game. Don't make your mind do that, because you'll start fighting with yourself. Tristan, get these things separate. We're going to look at the study guide, get it to completion, and then we'll see how much time is left. And then then you can play the game. Now, when he showed up that way, he finished in about a third of the time. But if he would have shown up as a deal, he would have been half there, been fighting me the whole way. Dad, get this done for me. He wouldn't have participated. And then he would go, oh, I'm done. And then he bails at the end. If he was the other way, he would have bailed.
Right.
So once I got his brain to separate those 2 things, he played full out on the assignment. And then he was surprised. He was amazed. He goes, Dad, I thought I was going to only have a half an hour left. I have an hour and a half left to play the game. I go, see how when your mind participates fully in what you're doing, it gets done quicker. He goes, yeah. And then he goes over and plays Fortnite, and he got more time. That's the difference between black and white thinking, which is deal making between one way or the other way. And the truth is, play full out in both spaces, and then you get both things to take care of.
So it seems that there's not a silver bullet quick answer to how to combat the narrative that black and white thinking can set up. And so you said there are 7 states of, can you repeat that?
Yeah, there are these different 7 states of languages that make it difficult to compete or to create a deficit. But what's missing is that underneath those 7 things, there is a vein of gold of language that can be used to combat anything that's set up here.
And so Are those 7 states of language, are they each a topic we need to dive deeply into in future episodes?
That's correct. Yeah. And the answer is there. It looks like a simple answer, but yeah, try to execute it. I mean, try to be compassionate when somebody says a very tragic sentence, and without getting activated. That's what we're going to be working on, Tom, on these podcasts. And that's one of the things that I provide, the consulting and coaching and training that I do on. So
right, which is why I'm here and participating with you in this podcast, because I'm one of those students and I love it, and it helps me obviously in my business, and we've talked about that
awesome.
In our premiere episode. But okay, well, I look forward to that journey, and I hope our listeners do too, to go through those 7 different states of language or use of language, and boy, it must take discipline. That's probably why it's so hard. It must take discipline for
just a little bit. It's hard to swap out. It's hard to swap out the word stupid with the word awareness. I would like awareness instead of saying you're stupid. I'm not sure if we're getting full awareness here. Instead of saying what an idiot. You see how easy it is to do the label?
It is much easier.
But it's it's just getting used to swapping out language, going like, listen, Tom, I think Americans just need a little spoonful of awareness.
Wow. That I would think would land in a very different way. It would.
Listen, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about awareness. Tell me about what you're aware of and how that works. And I'll think about the things that I'm aware of, and we'll see if we can find the truth in the middle.
Wow.
I'll meet you there.
Wow. That's wonderful. Okay, Bill, I think that's a great place to leave it for today. And I look forward to starting to get into those details, take those deep dives. And hopefully listeners, you will as well.
Yep. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Take care.
You
All
too.
right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.